everyone. I hope your day so far is good. This is Resilient Radio Podcast. I am your host, Daphne Wallace, and I'm also a person in recovery from mental illness, substance abuse, and trauma. We are building up a resilient recovery support community and using our platform to share recovery stories on shining a light for anyone out there listening that might be needing to hear some hope. And we are also breaking the stigma associated with mental illness and addiction for those out there seeking recovery. By doing this, we provide education and recovery resource options for those in poverty. Today we have with us David Stoecker from Springfield, Missouri. David is an advocacy and education outreach coordinator at Missouri Outreach Network, co-founder at Springfield Recovery Community Center, director, founder, speaker at Better Life in Recovery, Inc., counselor at Alternative Opportunities, and so much more. David, I want to start with thanking you for everything that you have done for the recovery community, and thank you for coming on here today to share your story with us. So, can you share with us a little bit about your life journey, a little bit about your background, and how you got to where you are today helping others?
Absolutely. So, like you said, my name is David Stoecker, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't used alcohol or other drugs since January 31st to 2009, and because of that, today I work to make the community I live in a better place. A lot of times when people find out I'm in recovery, they ask me questions about my past. Like, what worked for you? What can we do to address addiction? What can we do to support recovery? And I generally start off by answering the first of those questions. You know, my first memory is being molested by a babysitter. I grew up with a dad who had a drinking problem. I was dropped off with my grandparents in 5th grade, and my grandfather was the kind of guy who would beat me and then keep me out of school for a week until I healed up, calling into school and telling them I was sick or I was helping them in the field. My father got sober, and he got custody of me the summer before 7th grade, and that summer I was introduced to marijuana and alcohol. And I found that, I don't know, I guess I always remember the way I felt the first time that I smoked marijuana. You know, almost instantly I stopped thinking about all the abuse. And pretty soon I found out that alcohol and other drugs also had the exact same effect. They numbed me emotionally, and they allowed me to escape the constant thoughts of all the past abuse I'd gone through. So, you know, I always say that first summer turned into a 25-year odyssey that would see me drop out of high school. I've died 8 times. I've been in and out of jail. I turned 21 in the Missouri correctional system. And in that 25 years, I never strung together more than 30 days without using other than whenever I'd be in a residential rehab. And from the outside, I mean, my life looked like a wreck, right? People are looking at my life and they're like, why doesn't he quit using? Why does he keep doing this? Honestly, I didn't see my life ever improving or getting better, right? I think part of the problem was that I didn't have negative consequences for a long time. You know, when I first started using, drugs weren't bad or evil like everybody had always said. They served a purpose, you know. Not thinking about the years of abuse was amazing. So for me, I always say I didn't have a drug problem, I had a drug solution. My problem was unaddressed trauma. And the solution I found was substances. You know, that kind of served as it's how I self-medicated. You know, I had all this toxic stress, and I had no idea how to manage it or work through it, and was never given the opportunity or the supports I needed. So drugs kind of became my answer. And then when the negative consequences started kicking in, by that time my body was dependent on drugs, and I go into withdrawal. So that's kind of how I entered into substance use. So, I mean, from there, you know, I used for years and years, and I could always numb and escape, and then finally I found something that I couldn't numb and escape many years later. My dad died by suicide, and when that happened, I had broke up with the mother of my son. By this time I had a kid who was right around a year old, and she stopped letting me see my son, which was probably a pretty good call on her part because of how bad I got after my dad's death. And for me, I was an agnostic. At the time, I grew up with a mom and dad that would scream and cuss at each other all the way to church, and then as soon as the front tire of the car touched the church parking lot, they'd be all smiles. You know, so I grew up with a lot of fake people. And like I said, the babysitter that molested me was from our church. I had really bad experiences. And that kind of led to my agnosticism, and I worked with a kid and him and his wife loved on me when I didn't care about myself, and they saw potential in me when I didn't see potential in myself. And after my dad's death, Nate. He came up to me at work one day, and he was like, man, I have never seen you like this. He said, you're lower than I've ever seen you. I don't mean that in a bad way. He said, I just think you need some people in your life that actually care about you. He said, I would love for you to join me and Becky at church and then come out to eat with us after church. And I laughed at him, and I told him he was lucky to get me to church for his wedding. I'm like, dude, I don't go to church except weddings and funerals. And a couple weeks later, he invited me again, and I laughed at him. And then a couple weeks after that, his wife was visiting him at work, and she was like, hey, we're going to a concert, to a free concert this weekend. There'll be barbecue, and we'd love to have you come. And I'm like, sure, that sounds great. And she was like, well, it's after church. I was like, dang it. I was like, you know what, I'll come. And I came and visited, and I will say I didn't drink the Kool-Aid, but the first song they played was a song by a group called Third Day, and it was Cry Out to Jesus, and they actually talk about addiction in the song. And they had a Celebrate Recovery that met there, and they invited me to the CR, and it was really fun to hang out with people who cared about me, even though I didn't have anything to give them. Like, I'll be honest, I look at the friends I had in my addiction, I always say some of them probably would have taken a bullet for me, right? But for the right amount of money, they probably would have put a bullet in me, I was a therapist for years, and one of the questions is how many close personal friends do you have? And when I would have somebody that I was doing the assessment with, looking at multiple pathways to recovery.
Right. I agree with you.
The pathway that I found that worked for me was Christ. So yeah. I met with him, talked, I accepted Jesus into my life, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't drank since then. I haven't drugged since then. I haven't smoked a cigarette since then. I met my wife a couple months later. We dated for a year before we got married, and there was no premarital sex. I've been in one fight since then, and it was in a boxing ring raising money for project graduation. I've coached a few times since then, right? Progress, not perfection.
What do you think it is for you about having that relationship that helps you be able to be sustained, and be able to manage things differently?
Wow. Before, I believed that this life is all there was. And when I died, I turned to dust. And so nothing I did today really mattered. So I lived my life just to please me and make me happy no matter who it hurts. I was a hedonist, basically. I just lived for pleasure. And I also had the weight of everything that I'd ever done and everything that had ever been done to me on my shoulders, and I walked around with it every day. Forgive me of those things. So I don't need to walk around and beat myself up about them because they're gone. There's a Latin phrase. There's a Latin phrase. It's tabula rasa. It means blank slate. And I really like thinking of it like that. Like I had a whole new slate to start over on. And the other part of it is, I also know that when I die, that I'm going to have to give account for my life, and I want it to be filled with positive things. Right. Because now I believe that there's something that comes after this life, and I need to prepare myself for it. You don't prepare yourself for it by staying jacked up all the time.
That's absolutely like you have a fresh start. I've experienced, a lot of things in my time. I've experienced that made me feel good and this and that. Whenever my life changed and God presented me a new opportunity to start fresh, there was nothing that I have experienced like that experience. There's no other experience like on my journey as far as growth or awareness that was quite like the experience of knowing I start from here.
Absolutely. It's an amazing thought, and and if he can forgive me, then I should be able to forgive myself too. And it's also what I liked about Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery was really good for me.
It's good.
Because I used to think that the only people who could understand me or accept me for who I was people who had done drugs. Yeah. I was like, well, if they haven't done drugs and they're not in recovery like me, then they'll never understand. And what I found in there was people with eating disorders and anger and control problems and codependency. Man, they've gone through a lot of the same things that I had when I was younger. They drove a different vehicle to numb and escape. You know, so here I could share my testimony with somebody that had never had a drug problem and have them understand and still love on me after they knew who I really was. And for me, that was helpful.
It's more broad. The Celebrate Recovery is something that has impacted me as well, because it's the whole concept is hurts, habits, and hang-ups. You know, whatever it is that you're struggling with. And that's kind of what we base our show on here. We're focusing on the mental health and the drug addiction, you know, recovery and trauma. But anything anybody goes through, you know, there's nothing. Everybody that needs to be heard should be able to be heard, you know, and heal and find support.
Absolutely. And I mean, when you look at it like that, I mean, everybody's in recovery for something. So I'm not a unicorn out there.
Right.
You know? So, I mean, God helped a lot, but there was also, I started looking around and I realized that there wasn't a whole lot to do for sober people in my community. So I started creating things, and it was slow at first. Like the first year, I think we did one event. The second year, we did 3 events. Then in 2014, Philip Seymour Hoffman died. And I remember reading through articles that people have left on Facebook, on like our local newspaper, and KY3, which is one of our big TV channels, on the article. And they left comments like, who cares, just another dead junkie, and we should give this stuff away for free so these people can eliminate themselves from the gene pool. And I realized that that's the way people. So we ended up getting a little, we started doing more visibility things. Like we did a 5K, 10K recovery run with a big family-free barbecue, live music. We painted an elementary school playground, just people in recovery and their families giving back. And over time, I mean, it's kind of grown. In 2015, we filed a 501c3, and 2016, we started the Springfield Recovery Community Center. Last year, we had over 800 groups and events. We had over 10,000 people through the door and another 3,500 people that came to outside events that we do.
That's so awesome.
And we're just continuing to grow, you know.
So if anybody's out there listening, if you don't have the things that you need, then you may be the one that can start it, you know, and get involved and have things happen and make the change happen, because that's just what it is going to take. Where can people reach you at if they want to support what you're doing or help with some of the missions that you're on, or, you know, come to an event? For the events, if you go to www.betterlifeandrecovery.com or betterlifeandrecovery.org. Either one will take you to the same website. Jump on Facebook also and reach him, and reach out to somebody if you need any help. Also, be sure to check out that documentary, Not My Child. I'm going to go check that out too. And because it's so important that we all pitch in together to bring awareness and to help people out there who need to have hope, because many of us remember how it was, how it feels, and how it is still for a lot of people being out there needing help and not having the support or means. So it's been a great show, David. I'm so glad that you came on, and I'm so glad that you are able to do what you're doing, and, you know, things is working out to help people out there that need it. And I'm ever inspired on this journey that I'm on, because I keep coming across people like you who spend their time trying to help others be them better selves and realize that they're not alone. And I think it's so important, and I'm grateful to be able to do what I do today as well. No, I was just going to say thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm big on calling people hope dealers. Yes. You know, I'm a hope dealer, but I'm not alone. I think anybody who's overcame anything and uses that experience to give hope to other people is a hope dealer. Absolutely. You know, and thank you for letting me share my hope. So if you or someone you know would like to be a guest or submit your story to us, email clientservices@tntalk.org. That's clientservices@tenntalk.org. Your story is so important, and you never know whose life it can impact. You have been listening to Resilient Radio Podcast. Join our group on Facebook and check out how we are transforming the social service industry by going to biztalk.com. That is TABIZ talk.com. Join our newsletter for updates.